I want to continue from yesterday's live stream, because yesterday live stream we were talking about the idea of framework. So instead of saying that, well, things doesn't work, let's look at more tactics. Instead, we want to go back and look at the framework, because in the framework itself, we talked about the three things. And if you haven't caught that, if you haven't watched that, that is something that you want to watch. So, hi everyone, how's everyone doing? I hope everyone is doing really, really well. For folks in Singapore, you have earned yourself this end of the day. I certainly hope that you have been productive at work today. I have been just being in the office for the new office today. So the new video is going to come out on LinkedIn right after this. So let's go back to what we talked about yesterday. So when we talked about framework, essentially there are three parts to that. The first part is we talked about the set of beliefs, and then the second part is, with those beliefs, what are some of the principles behind those beliefs, right? And so today we want to talk about the strategy. So today's live stream video, the title to that is three strategies to get started on digital assets. And let me preface this by saying the following. Yes, yes, it is true that the barriers to entry, it's now been almost eradicated. Anyone who has a smartphone, who has access to internet, arguably will be able to create digital assets, right? So anyone with a cell phone can start putting uh, the phone in front of them and start making digital assets just like this one. Now, however, the point that just because it is easy to get in, the barriers of entry is low, doesn't mean you shouldn't be tough on yourself by playing the role of an investor, right? So I always recall in 2000 when I was involved in the .com, one of the key activities that I learned so much was this process of meeting with an investor. And when you meet with an investor, one of the key questions that the investors would want you to be able to answer is, have you validated the market? How huge is that market? What is the growth potential of the market? And many people are led to believe that just because now the barriers to entry is literally eliminated and it's so low, means that you should just jump on it. Contrary to that, I think if you do not play the role of the investor on yourself and asking yourself that hard question of whether are you investing time in an optimal fashion, then I think you are just being a bad business person. So the first phase of the first step when you approach this, the first thing you want to do really is to conduct a a research on your competitors, the research on the market, for example. So there are two aspects to that. The first aspect really is to look at the demand, right? Is there a problem that you can solve? And are there enough people to want to have that problem solved? And is there enough people who are willing and able to pay for that solution? So that's part one. Part two really is the whole process of looking at competitors. What are the competitors doing? Are you able to do it better? Are you able to do it in a way that is different? or are you able to do it in a way that it's totally groundbreaking, right? It's totally optimal. So notice I didn't say can you do it cheaper, because going going on to that route will eventually lead to a race to the bottom. So the key idea here is not about being cheaper than the competitor, but being more effective and more efficient. Of course, efficiency, there is a threshold with efficiency, right? So that is something that you really, and then once you have done this too, then the next part it's really to test. And when I say to test, essentially it's you want to be able to test the market. And so this is where the idea of the minimum viable product or the minimum viable size of market comes into play. Now, at this point in time, you may not have access to a huge market, especially if you're just starting out, and then it's fine. What you want to be able to establish is what is the minimum number that you can begin with. So I give you an example. I when I started on LinkedIn, the first thing that I did was I went onto LinkedIn to look at what is it that people want to watch, what is it that people want to consume, what are the posts and content that are already doing well on LinkedIn. And once I found that, the next step is to look at who are the people who are actually producing those content, because arguably these people could be my competitors. And then the question is, how can I do it differently? How can I do it in such a way that even though I'm a nobody, I'm still able to garner that amount of attention? And so what I found was essentially people want to learn about tools, strategies, and techniques, and even resources of how they can bring their career to the next level. So that's number one. Number two is that people are very interested in other people's story, especially aspirational type of stories. And so once I had this two key broad idea, the next step is to do a competitors research. And what I mean by competitors research is look at the people who are producing the content. How good is it? What is it that they do? And one of the things that I noticed at a point in time was that many of them were doing text posts. And so if I'm going to do text posts, what's going to happen is I'm going to potentially go against what they are already doing. I mean, I will be competing. At best, I will be a better better producer of content, but I will not be different. And that's when I decided to use videos, right? So that's part two. Now, part three is then to say that, well, what is the minimum amount of effort that I can put in to determine whether I will be able to get a return? So for that, I decided that once I put out certain things, I want to pivot. I want to make sure that I connect with the right people. And if I connect with the right people and they kind of give me that sensing that I'm on the right track, or I'm able to leverage their network and I'm able to explode from there, then I have a fighting chance. Otherwise, not. And so those are the three steps of the strategies when you look at creating digital assets. So once again, um, I just want to say that I will be conducting a deeper dive webinar on how to create digital assets, creating digital assets. And so if you are interested in participating in that webinar, um, make sure you leave a comment below with the word create digital assets, and myself or my team then reach out to you. So this webinar is free. Of course, after the webinar itself, if you find that this is useful, what I'm going to offer to you would be a step-by-step online class which I will teach live for 6 to 8 weeks, and that is something that requires an investment. Otherwise, the webinar is free of charge. It's a session whereby I go deeper dive into creating digital assets, and to give you a sense of what the online training is going to entail. So if that's something that you're interested in, and if you want to create an income of you not being there, then definitely you want to sign up for this webinar. With that, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you taking time to watch this. Give me a thumbs up if it has been useful, and make sure you sub, especially if you are on YouTube. Make sure you sub, so that you get notified whenever I put up piece of content. With that, thank you, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.